Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters and life. Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays. It's Mike D, and I'm so glad I have a guest because I don't have to talk the whole time. Welcome, Matt. Matt is a Brooklynite. Is that what the word is? Brooklynite? Brooklynite?
A Brooklynite, yeah.
So Matt is a Brooklyn person from Brooklyn who has been an entrepreneur, opened a music venue, has ran and opened many bars, and is very familiar with the Brooklyn music scene early on in its life and all through the 90s. And we're going to talk a little bit about Brooklyn music and kind of the scene in New York City, pre-COVID, if you will. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, D. How are you? Mike D.
Yeah. So Matt, you grew up in Brooklyn, and everyone I think that doesn't know anything about music, the one thing they do know about Brooklyn is the Beastie Boys, right? So like white people like me growing up in New Jersey were like, who are these Beastie Boys and where is Brooklyn?
This is true. This is definitely true. I mean, the Beastie Boys, yeah. The Beastie Boys are from Brooklyn. I grew up listening to them. Wow. I remember having posters of them in my summer camp in 1985 and 1986. That's when they popped up, right? Because they were on, wow, I guess the Beastie Boys were on Def Jam right around the same time that LL Cool J came out. So yeah, they were big time. They put Brooklyn, really on the universal map, I think. I mean, there were definitely artists in Brooklyn that had their niche, and I feel like the Beastie Boys were sort of speaking for everybody at that moment. They were speaking for the African American crowd. They were speaking for the white boys, and the original '80s hipsters that didn't really have a voice. And as a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old listening to these guys, it was pretty insane, really, really insane. And then they just took off. So I don't know. The Beastie Boys were definitely extremely influential to us, my people, as well as just in general music and as a whole. I mean, rock and roll.
Is that why? That's an interesting point? Is that why you think they were so popular? Because they spanned across like all these different genres of like Black, Latino, white people in the suburbs. Like they just could
definitely. I mean,
resonate.
100%. I think originally they resonated with the white young folks because white people like me were looking at these guys like, holy shit, who are these guys? And how do they have the balls to do this? But then you listen to what they were saying, and it was kind of what you were feeling. I mean, they were a little older, so maybe my particular, class wasn't exactly feeling what they were feeling, but at least it was exactly what adolescents are kind of looking for, to look up to an artist, to some degree. But at the same time, they were resonating with other walks of life, whether they be, African American or Latino or Asian or whoever, because they looked white, but they spoke the language of hip hop, which was not very white at that time.
Right.
So everybody was kind of tuning in and trying to find out what their next move was going to be.
And when the Beastie Boys were in Brooklyn starting out and doing that, what other artists were kind of in Brooklyn during that time or kind of maybe under the radar in Brooklyn, if you will?
In Brooklyn at that time, I mean, it's very early. I mean, there was a group called Lords of Brooklyn, that was very underground. White boys from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. They were making some noise a little bit after the Beastie Boys. They eventually kind of branched out, and then there was somebody who came out. We're talking 1990. It's not quite the Beastie Boys, but you definitely know who they are. They're called House of Pain.
Mm.
And the head of House of Pain, that's the leader of House of Pain, was this guy named Everlast. And he really he threw, you know, that genre, like that kind of white guy hip hop genre, really, really, really on the map. And that was like 1991, 1992. In that, you know, from Brooklyn, that is. I mean, I got LL, I guess LL was Queens. Um, Brooklyn, I mean, I'm trying to think, maybe Run DMC might have been Brooklyn. I don't know exactly. There's so many. I mean, MC Light. I mean, if you're talking about, you know, hip hop,
Yeah.
you know, then you have some real old school cats that are, you know, that were definitely big time, and then they slowed down, unfortunately, you know. But I don't know. Ask me about after that.
Well, I think one of the things that, I mean, you were a part of in the 90s was not only bar scene in Brooklyn, but I mean, you opened a music slash bar club called SouthPaw. And I've been there many times. And you had all different genres of music, but
Yeah.
obviously you had, you know, SouthPaw was in Park Slope. And I remember you had different genres of music, which was awesome, but you had a lot of DJs, a lot of hip
Hmm.
hop, a lot of old school rap.
Right.
Um,
Well, what happened was at Southpaw, you know, I'll give you the quick ish kind of rundown. You know, the Southpaw thing ended up with us befriending a gentleman named Todd Abramson. Now, Todd Abramson was a DJ who goes by the name of DJ Toddophonic Todd, and he was spinning all around New York City for many years in the 90s, and then even a little bit in the early 2000s. Now, he also was a booking agent, and
hmm,
he started booking at a really, really hip club in New York City called Tramps. And Tramps is where a lot of crazy shit went down. We're talking like after, you know, in New York, you had the whole club scene. You had Studio 54, and then it went into the Limelight, and then it went into the Palladium and the Tunnel. And then you had Tramps, where Tramps is where you had a little more like live music kind of stuff happening within the club,
yeah,
right? So it's not like you went in there and bought tickets to go see a live show. You would hang out and you'd party, and then you would also see a live show. So he was booking that room. And then he also helped book a small club called Maxwell's in Hoboken, New Jersey. And then something happened, and him and one of the members of Sonic Youth bought it.
oh wow,
So they ended up owning Maxwell's together. A member of Sonic Youth, Todd Abramson, and another guy. And then at that point, they started booking all kinds of stuff, mostly in the indie rock, new wave, you know,
yeah,
sort of world.
yeah,
Never urban, really, never hip hop. But eventually, he got introduced to my partner and I when we were building Southpaw in the early 2000s, in about 2001. He saw the space, he loved it, and he said, "I want to be a part of this." And we told him that we grew up in Brooklyn and we were more fans of the old school kind of hip hop scene, but we also were into some world music as well as some indie rock.
yeah, yeah,
And eventually he was like, "Okay, cool. So we're going to start out giving ourselves a name with the indie rock world," which was really starting to come up in
yeah,
Brooklyn at that time. I
yeah,
mean, we're talking like the Strokes, you're talking TV on the radio,
yep,
you know, really, really crazy, you know, artists that just made it big over time. And then little by little, he let us plug in the stuff that we were fans of, which was shows with Slick Rick, shows with Big Daddy Kane.
that's awesome.
You know, eventually we book a show literally one night, you know, on a Wednesday night, we would have, you know, Blues Traveler, and on the next Thursday night we would have you know, the Beat Nuts, you know, or
Right.
just somebody, you know, just some crazy old stuff. I mean, I've had, you know, Guru from Jazzmatazz, and DJ Premier and Guru from Gangstar, shooting videos there, and just everybody kind of coming around, because Southpaw ended up being a really cool spot. And
Yeah.
everybody realized that we weren't only hip hop, we weren't only rock, we weren't only Latino. I mean, we had all kinds of world music. So it was really, it's cliche, but it really became like a melting pot of music.
Yeah, and I remember, what was the Rub? Wasn't that a DJ?
Oh yeah,
What was that
yeah,
all about? Because that, to your point about different types of music.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
you had
the rub was sort of concocted by this young man named DJ Ayers. He, Mississippi native, met Mikey, my partner, Mike Palms, and his partner Cosmo Baker, and he had another young man named DJ 11, Joey,
and
who I became very
Cosmo Baker was from
Philly.
Philadelphia, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cosmo's a Philly native. DJ 11 is an Oakland native, and Ayers is a Mississippi native, and they all put their collective DJ skills together in New York City, and formed this group. And after meeting Mike, and then Mike introducing them to me, we decided to try to put this monthly party together, and we called it the Rub. It was the first Saturday of every month, and it was consistently the best party in New York City for 10 years.
Yeah.
Every single first Saturday of the month for 10 years at Southpaw. Eventually, when we ended up shutting our doors, they moved it to another club, and they continued it. Never to the degree of what they had at Southpaw, just because of the vibe.
Yeah.
The place where they're in right now, they have more people because I think it's a bigger place, but it'll never live up to what it was at our place.
Yeah, and I mean, Parks or Southpaw was it was intimate, but also big enough to move around. Like, that was what was cool about it. And
Right.
I've been to the Rub. I think I saw 2 shows, and the thing I remember most was, because I wasn't a big DJ type of fan, but there's this DJ, and then there's a guy playing electric guitar over top of
Right.
the spinning, and it was like mind blowing,
Yeah.
and the crowd is just going crazy, and it was like combining all this type of music that, for me, it was like, I'm not a big DJ type of guy, but like, to add electric guitar over a DJ was just so cool, and it just sounded awesome. And
Yeah.
that, so that's, I think the intimacy of the club and the experience was probably part of why people love going there.
It was really strange. It really did feel like your living room. I
Yes.
mean, we could pack 500 people in there, but it still felt like you were just in a house party. It
Yes.
was really, there was something very special about it. I mean, I remember when, one Halloween, it was all of a sudden we looked at the back door, and Mark Ronson was like, "Hey, I want to come into the Rub." So Mark comes in, we're all hanging out on stage. Mark does a 30-minute set, and all of a sudden, boom, here's your Grammy winner, just bullshitting up there, on the stage. Happened all the time there. People, world famous people would just kind of walk in and be like, "I want to be a part of this event," whether it was the Rub or some other live show that we had going on. I mean, I don't remember if you were even at that birthday party that somebody threw for me when I had, KRS-One and Rakim, performed for me. It's really
That's
like Rock.
awesome.
It was a night with Rakim, and KRS-One was in town. Somebody told him, he came by, and he was just jumped on stage because I've had him there before. He knew us.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Yeah.
there you go.
It was
So
more
it's
about, they just like playing there, and like
yeah,
the
they just wanted to be in the they wanted to be in the mix. It's kind of like, cool, what's going on today at Southpaw?
yeah.
That was it was nice. It was nice to know, but again, it was pretty diverse. I mean, there's a lot of hip hop stories, but I've had Joan Jett, played, before, Devendra Banhart. I mean, I remember, Devendra
Right.
Banhart, coming in there, and everybody's like, who is this little dude wearing a bathrobe? What is
Yeah.
going on here?
Yeah.
You know?
And obviously, one of my favorite artists, Chris Robinson, played there as well. I think he lived in Brooklyn for a while. So like, it's like this diversity that you had at the venue.
Yeah.
And obviously, for all my listeners, it's always, for my show, it's always about like meeting famous people. As a club owner, a bar owner, living and growing up in New York, I'm sure you've met plenty of people. But can you tell us a story or two
Sure.
of people that you're like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm talking to and met this person,
Sure. I mean, one night we had so Zoe Kravitz, right, is in a band. Now Zoe's cute. She's got a lot going on for her, and that was great to see her on stage. But it was pretty fucking awesome when Lenny Kravitz walked in and was like, "Who owns this place?"
That's awesome.
So Lenny's hanging out in the back. We're talking, we're BSing, and then a very, very strange story. Lenny Kravitz happens to be like by marriage a cousin of a guy that I know who's friends with another friend of mine. So they're all there like talking, and this guy that I know from 5 years earlier is related essentially to Lenny Kravitz. So we're all BSing, and then I turn around and I hear this voice, "Yo Lenny, yo Len, yo Len, yo Len," and I'm like, I turn around, it's Drake. So
Shut
Drake was
up.
there. Yeah, Drake is hanging out, watching his girl Zoe play, and comes over, and we're all just BSing. Yo, this is great, and everybody's like, "This room is so cool," and we just start, just shooting the shit, and you're as normal as you can possibly be.
Yeah.
Try not to be silly. You try not to be starstruck. You ask them if they want a beverage, and then you have a shot with them. And next thing you know, you're all just bullshitting, giving each other high fives for the entire show.
That's
You know,
awesome.
that was just like hanging out in there. Another person who came in one time to see an artist, I forget who the artist was that he came to see, but we're just bullshitting at the bar. I'm having myself a little drink, watching my staff. Boom, Edward Norton walks in. And
No way.
I was like,
That's great.
swear. Ed Norton comes in, he looks over, gives me a nod. I guess he understood that I was who I was in terms of management or ownership. And I said to the bartender, I was like, obviously, whatever he wants, on me.
Yeah.
Gives him a couple of drinks, comes over, says what's up, gives me a handshake, start watching the show together. He was just cool as shit too. I mean, he was really not in the mood to talk a hell of a lot because he was there for a specific artist or a friend, but
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
great that he was normal as shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Well,
lot of these people are.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they're just people, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're and you work in the business and it's maybe a little different, but at the end of the day, they just want to be treated like people, I think, and not.
Usually they do. Usually, I would tell you this much. Usually they do. A lot of straight up, real deal, famous folks just want to walk in the front door and do what they do. Stand on the side, get a drink at the bar. Try not to bother me. I'm going to be as normal as I can. All right. Then you have a random artist. I mean, a random person. Now, granted, she was great, but she didn't want to be seen by a lot of people. So Jennifer Connelly, right?
Mm,
Jennifer Connelly was real sweet. If she ever hears this podcast, she won't remember me at all. But she used to live in Brooklyn. She bought a house not too far away from the club.
got it.
Beautiful house, by the way. And one of her girlfriends was performing. So, of course, we get the phone call. Jennifer wants to come by, doesn't want to come in the front door. I meet her at the back. She comes in. She is a sweetheart and a half and just stands backstage with me and a security guard and watches her friend perform from the backstage
From
area.
the back. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They don't want to stand in the main room because they don't want the focus to be on them.
On her. Yeah.
So it was cool and I understood it. She certainly didn't want to stand at the bar,
Yeah.
and be, gawked at by most people, especially men. But she was also a very, very cool woman. And she was a sweetheart about everything.
Well, I mean, these people too, I mean, they want to see music, right? And then if they, like, to your
Right.
point about if they have friends, they want to support their friends just like anyone else. Like, I want to see, especially if you live in Brooklyn or New York, you want to go out, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't feel sorry for them for their lives, but it is tough
Right.
probably to be famous and try to go to a bar or go hear live music.
Right.
But it sounds like, I mean, you've had a special experience that you've gotten kind of that front end, if you will, and then the back end where you get those experiences that probably most people never got to have, where you have these artists
Right.
that you're booking and you're seeing play, you get to interact with them kind of on a different level, which is pretty awesome.
No, definitely. I mean, it's funny. You go through it, and then all of a sudden you go home that night, and you're like, "Did I just did that just happen?
Yeah.
Like, I've just seen this girl perform in, 7 movies, in the last 8 years, and now we're BSing. I'm getting
Yeah.
her a beer,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
definitely one of those crazy times.
I mean, I one of my best moments at SouthPaw was many New Year's Eves ago. One of my top bands, Luna, played on New Year's Eve, and the
Right.
next thing I know, I'm in the green room with
Right.
you and the band,
Smoking weed.
talking with the band and smoking cigarettes, and I'm like, they don't even know who I
Yeah.
am, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's New Year's Eve, and who cares, right? So it's like,
Totally.
um, I think, as a musician, I'm sure the bands know who the crazy fans are, also, if you will. You know what I mean?
They definitely do, but it's nice to know that just like it is in the movies, it's true. Like, if things just go with the flow, and as long as the artists or the famous people that are there feel safe, they're going to let things go, unless they have a very strict or stringent rule and management and or bodyguards there to
Yeah,
make sure something doesn't happen. There've been plenty of times when people are just kind of like, don't come in here.
yeah,
But like
yeah,
on New Year's Eve, like you said, Luna probably didn't give a shit who was downstairs, as long as security let them in and they vetted them and everything was cool, or they were friends with management or them.
right, right.
It's just and you got to kind of go with the flow. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Cat Power,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So Cat Power is, I mean, she's a powerhouse, even though she sings and performs extremely melodic and soft. I mean, she sold our room out, 500 tickets, 3 nights in a row. Um, we got a piano brought in for her, and she's always been known to like kind of cut a show short. She's a
mhm,
wonderful artist. She's really smart. She's beautiful, and everybody kind of wants a piece of her.
yeah.
And she wants nobody backstage ever at all. Not even gonna happen. And we had a dog that we raised at the club, a little Rottweiler named Remy, and she loved Remy. So literally before her show, I'm downstairs with her, just me and her and the dog, bullshitting in the green room, having a great time, just talking. And she's crazy. I mean, she's like, I want this fucking dog on stage with me. I want to play my piano. I want to play my piano and sing for 550 people in like straight up silence
Right.
with your Rottweiler sitting at my feet the whole time. And unfortunately, the moment before we were going to leave, she kept petting my dog the exact same place for like 20 minutes in her belly. And sometimes dogs get a little feisty if you touch them too many times in the same place. And at one point, my dog kind of made a little, like a quick little growl at her.
And that
Fucked
was
her
it.
mind up. It fucked her mind up all day. Couldn't put the dog on stage with her. And sure enough, the first night that she performed, instead of performing for 2 hours, she performed for 45 minutes, and she got up and she left.
And it was all your dog's fault.
And it was all my dog's fault. And to be honest, that is really what people. Not only is she a great performer, but people pay money to see what she might do.
Yeah.
So 550 people standing there watching a woman play piano are probably wanting to see this girl stand up and say, fuck this.
Do something. Right, right.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
left. And everybody's looking at each other like, I can't believe it. And then they're all like, that was great.
That was great. Yeah.
Everybody gets drunk and they
I
leave
was
and they come
there.
back the next day.
Yeah, I was there when she left.
It's gonna get written up in the New York Post or something stupid.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other people that used to come by. Man, I got definitely a lot of famous folk that used to just come by and hang out.
That's awesome. So I will definitely have you back on, Matt, but it was a pleasure
Is that
talking.
15 minutes?
Oh, it's probably like 4 minutes. There is no time on Rock and Roll Fridays. My listeners listen to the full extent of my shows. I'm huge in Guatemala and France.
Huge.
Um,
Huge. There's only one person I know that says huge, and we don't like them.
So I want to thank Matt for being on Rock and Roll Fridays and talking about the Brooklyn music scene and his experiences owning SouthPaw and talking about all the great people that he met. So thanks a lot, Matt.
My pleasure.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me, buddy.